saw it on TV.
Welcome back, dear listeners, to Fright or Flight, the podcast where we rank, recap, and review every horror movie in a given franchise.
I'm Geraldine, Android Jump-Scare Jer, the Fright of the podcast.
And I'm Frankie, the Flight of the podcast. And today, Geraldine, we will be starting our new season, our first season of 2024. And what are we covering?
We are covering Stephen King horror films, or rather horror films based on Stephen King novels.
More specifically, today we're doing The Shining.
The Shining.
I'm so happy to be doing these movies because I've never read a Stephen King book.
Neither have I.
Or I've seen any of the movies. Now, this is a film that was shot with cameras. Geraldine, I'm not sure if you're
As
aware.
most movies are, yeah.
These were using film cameras. This, and I really wanted to talk to you about this because this movie was actually made before TikTok was a thing. So before we had TikTok, we still had methods of recording film and video. Just want to inform you.
Can I say something?
Yeah, I love it when you say things.
You say that you're not a troll, but then you say things like that.
I really hate it when you call me
because
that.
you are.
It is so insulting
You are
to me.
trolling people.
I'm not trolling you.
Me.
No, I'm just having a conversation with you right now. And I just feel like sometimes when I do, you just start attacking me.
Because...
See, like right now, you see, like,
you know
I'm
what?
happy to be here.
2024, new year, new me. I'm gonna do a little zippy zip.
This is a podcast, Geraldine.
Yeah, but I'll do a little zippy zip on the trolling thing.
What we do is talk.
Because if that hurts your feelings, I don't want to hurt your feelings. But you do troll me a lot.
Me a snowflake.
No, I didn't call you. If I would have said you're a snowflake, I would have said, "Bitch, you're a snowflake."
Oh, is this how you feel? Is this?
No, I did. If I felt that way, you would know. Okay. I'm just saying. But you do troll me.
I love how that this is how we're starting the 2024 season. Yeah. It's just you two
don't
arguing.
Worry. Over the break, we completely settle out all our differences.
Just hear sounds. We do need to find something like that, especially if we disagree on the movie.
Yeah, I'll just record that.
Maybe we'll just record that and then input that. Yeah. That was pretty good. I will say it was good punch sounds.
Can you do it again for me real quick? That was really good. I'm surprised you were able to do it twice. Geraldine, have you seen this movie before? The Shining.
I have. I've seen it many times, but I typically do this thing where if I've seen a movie, I will not rewatch it for the podcast sometimes because I'm like, I've seen it. But I was specifically like, I need to rewatch this. It's been a long time since I've seen it, so let me just rewatch it for funsies. And I really was shook because I did not remember it being 2 hours and 23 minutes long.
I'm glad you rewatched it because I was thinking the same thing. Like I was hoping you would.
Yeah.
Just because, 2024 minds, eyes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
How did you come in contact with this movie? Do you remember the first time you watched it?
My parents.
Yeah, they showed it to you?
More so, I think my
4-year-old Geraldine?
No, not 4 years old. My father showed it to me specifically. I don't think because I came from a two house, broken home. Broken home is what they call it, but it's really, I hate that that's a saying because I feel like it's stupid. But anyway, two different homes, mom's house, dad's house, whatever. Mom would show us certain movies, but she would do more of the censoring, and my father, typical father kind of thing. He's like, kind of. He would still make us close our eyes, but we would watch a lot more with my dad than we would my mom.
Yeah. Did your mom know?
Not a lot of the time, no. Because I would be like, yeah, I used to watch this movie growing up. She's like, I did not let you. And I was like, well, it's because Dad did.
I hear that a lot. Bailey's parents didn't really care that much. She would watch like Austin Powers by the age of like 8 or 9 or something.
I did that too. Yeah.
Yeah. But however people want to be raised. I mean, I think it only adds personality, right?
It does. I didn't remember a lot of this movie, but I do remember a lot of the iconic scenes, that we'll talk about, I'm sure, like the elevator, Danny on his little trike, Red Rum, that kind of thing. All of it, like the main things that you think about when you think of The Shining, but nothing super crazy. My dad did, whenever I was old enough, he did show me the old lady, and it scarred me for life because it was scary and gross.
I've never seen this movie at all. This is the first time I'm seeing it.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Okay.
But so I didn't grow up with those mannerisms. Bailey, though, was affected by seeing, Austin Powers at a young age. So she, I think that's affected like her like romantic interests and stuff like that.
Excuse me?
Yeah. Did you miss the whole Austin Powers part?
No, I did not miss it. I'm trying to see where you're going with this.
Well,
what are you trying to say about me right now?
Not just about how like you're a very unique individual with your own open-minded taste in men.
What are you saying?
You're digging yourself into a hole.
She just really likes the whole like European spy kind of approach. Shaggy hair. She loves Shaggy.
Shaggy's not your
Shagadelic.
Yes.
I see what you're going now. Okay, I see where you're going now. Very, very dorky.
Austin Powers respects women. I don't want to hear any kind of shit about Austin Powers.
Though.
Okay.
And he also was like, "No, Vanessa, you're too drunk. We can't do this." And I'm like, "Look at him. Consent is important to Austin Powers.
He's a consent king. We love him.
Right.
We do love consent."
Now, this movie is actually based on a book, Geraldine.
It is based on a book.
It's based by a Stephen King book. And the book is actually a little bit self-biographical. Yeah. Like Stephen King put a lot of himself into Jack Torrance. He was going through writer's block. He had alcoholism. And he was getting really annoyed with his family. He felt like he was being really distracted. And he wasn't able to put any of his thoughts into
So he wanted
story.
to kill them all, I see. Okay.
I guess that's a twist it took, because when he was checked into a hotel, and when he left, the clerk told him that he was the last one to check out. And
that's creepy.
All of that mixed together is what led him to write the events of this book.
That's really creepy. I would not want to be the last one to check out. That's...
This movie wasn't received well. It wasn't a hit when it came out. It actually garnered 2 Razzies. One for Stanley Kubrick for director and one for Shelley Duvall for actress.
What?
Yeah. I'm telling you, when this movie came out, people did not like it.
For Shelley Duvall to go through what she went through, for you to say that it was bad. Let me find out who did it.
Well, actually, ever since more has come out about that information, how she was treated on the set and the filming of the film, her Razzie has since been rescinded. So
good.
They took it back.
That's good news. That makes me feel a lot better because, man, that's really shocking though that this was not received well, because it's a really well put together movie. I will say, I don't like Stanley Kubrick for many, many reasons in general. I think he's a piece of shit. I think a lot of people probably think he's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Great movie. He does have great movies that he has made, but that doesn't negate that he's awful.
That's true. It didn't hit, and it's only been over the last few decades that it's really garnered like the praise that it's lived up to. I think this is one of the most talked about films, widely regarded as one of the scariest films of all time.
It is pretty
and
scary.
Honestly, one of the most like dissectable films. Like, I don't know if you know, but like there are entire communities based around this film and what everything means, because I think this movie is very vague and ambiguous, and I think it's hard. When I watched it, this is my first time I watched it, one of the biggest things for me was like trying to understand what the movie meant, because there's a lot of points where I feel like I watched and I was like, it looked crazy, like insane, like especially the visuals for the time. But I was thinking like, what does that mean? When I saw the bear costume guy, I'm like, what does that mean?
Okay. Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey.
They predicted it.
They predicted it, yeah.
So it's hard for me to parse some of that stuff, but like I said, it has a big influence on pop culture.
Yes, it does.
I think you're hard pressed to talk to anybody who hasn't seen at least some references made out of this film.
Or, I mean, there are so many iconic lines in this movie. So many. I mean, for example, it forced me to pull out my handy dandy typewriter that is functional. But I also pulled it out because Stephen King. I just think, classic guy with the typewriter, the big old glasses, that kind of thing.
If you guys are listening to the audio version, we have a neat little set that Geraldine put together for us, including her typewriter. And she's also dressed in lovely Shelley Duvall apparel.
Went to good old Goodwill today of all days, because I was like, I want to dress up like Wendy Torrance because I have the black hair right now. And but I really was shocked, and I tried to look for Stephen King novels. I feel like they're as popular as I feel they are. So it was definitely different or hard to come by. I feel like I see Stephen King novels all the time at Goodwill.
Oh, it's probably because you were looking for it.
It's probably why.
Yeah.
But I lucked out with today's wardrobe. But I forgot that I had this, but I have this beautiful pop-up book that was gifted to me, I would say probably like 10 years ago or so.
So
and
if you guys want to see
Stephen
any
King.
of that, if you guys want to see like the book, the typewriter, Geraldine's outfit, check us out on YouTube. This is a video podcast as well.
Yes, it is.
Now, I think some of the coolest parts about The Shining, Geraldine, is that since it has so much just attention on it as far as like people looking to find deeper meaning in it and also like to do deeper analysis on it, there is like this whole online thread of people who come up with their own theories about the film. And this has like, people go so deep on these that I call it the cult of The Shining.
Okay, that's
just
interesting.
because so many people are so into it. One of the theories, for example, that I want to talk to you about is that some people believe that this film is actually Stanley Kubrick admitting that he filmed the moon landing. I don't know if you know about that, but some people believe that we didn't go to the moon and that the footage that we received was actually filmed on a set somewhere in a different country, directed by Stanley Kubrick, because he did 1968's 2001, A Space Odyssey.
What?
Well, let's dig deep into it, because I think it's super. There's some interesting facts and some things that'll make you think, I don't know, there might be something going on here.
I'm not much of a conspiracy kind of girly, though, so I don't really dig deep into that kind of stuff, because I just think, cool. If not, cool.
You don't think the government's got some secrets underneath their sleeves?
I don't care. They probably do. Yeah. They probably have a lot under their sleeves. I just don't.
You don't think maybe like there's some aliens living next door?
1,000% there are aliens, but like I don't. Cool. I don't care as long as they don't.
I agree. Who cares?
Exactly.
What if you get abducted?
There are worse things that the government has done that we do know about.
What if you get probed?
So
we will not go down that road.
I don't want to get probed. Well, in the novel, the room is actually different than the room in the film. That's
really interesting because I was going to say, I see that you wrote 217, but in the movie, I've never read the novel, so I wouldn't know any of this stuff.
In the novel, it's room 217. The reason they changed it was supposedly because the hotel they filmed it at didn't want them to use room 217 because they were worried that if that was in the movie, that room would just go empty all the time because nobody would want to stay in a haunted room.
It's so fascinating to me because like watching this movie, I was like, I kind of wonder like how many of these, because there's so many infamous hotels that have had horrific like murders or true crime things that have happened that I would almost like I wouldn't be willing to stay there. To like stay in the room, but I would be willing to go into the room and like maybe do some like ghost hunting kind of stuff. Well, I say that now, but I'll probably shit my pants.
Yeah, you do that on a regular, just without the scary stuff.
No, I don't.
Now, ironically, the room has become the most requested one at the hotel.
That is so funny. See, that's what I'm saying.
So the room,
great minds.
They actually don't have a room 237, and that's why they use 237 so the hotel didn't have to worry about that. But that's just the reasoning that they tell you, the official reasoning. But it just so happens that the moon is 237,000 miles on average from Earth. The moon. Right?
Okay.
And also, if you notice on the key tag that is on the door, you'll notice that it says room number 237, right? So the only capital letters being room and the letter N, right? Well,
moon.
You can spell moon room with that. And also, what they don't want to go in there, right? You're not supposed to go in there. Just like we're not supposed to know the truth behind the moon landing.
You don't believe that, do you? Do you believe that?
Do I believe it?
Yeah.
Well, Jalen, I'm an open-minded person.
I'm not gonna criticize you.
I've never heard a giraffe speak. Have you?
Because they probably speak in their own little language with their other fellow giraffes.
I've heard them speak.
What do they say
in Madagascar?
True.
What
was his name? Melman?
Hippos? Yeah, I think it was Melvin. Yeah, I think that was his name.
Love him.
It's also kind of strange, Jalen, that Danny, at some point in the movie, wears an Apollo 11 sweatshirt.
I did notice that. I thought that was a pretty dope sweater. I was like, oh, that's really cool.
And isn't it also interesting that the carpet on the floor really matches the Apollo 11 launch pads? Don't they look similar?
They do look very similar. I mean...
Wow, it's almost like it took place in the same time period. Oh my God.
And isn't it also
the
strange?
mid-century modernism.
That's what I'm not shitting on people's theories, right?
Also, it didn't take place at the same time. What the heck? These are 20 years apart.
But you don't know when was the hotel built? Because I'm willing to bet that
the carpet isn't naturally in the hotel. That was.
Oh, is it not?
No.
Oh.
Actually, just a bit of information. None of the film was actually filmed inside a hotel. That was all sets. The outside of it, they went to a hotel, the Timberline Hotel. But all the indoor stuff, Stanley Kubrick didn't feel like he was getting enough lighting at the regular hotel, so they all built it on a set in England.
I feel like hotels typically have either really, really too white of a light or it's either too yellow. And there's not really an in-between. It always feels really gross or...
It's very corporate.
Yes, it is.
I agree.
So I can see that. I could see that because the lighting that he has in these shots are really, it's really nice.
That's something that people really praise him for is that, a lot of times horror movies are like what creeps in the dark. And this movie, everything is like super lit.
Yeah, in the light.
And that's some people call it a testament to Stanley Kubrick being able to make something horrifying all in broad daylight still.
Well, I think that's also really attributed as well to the accompaniment. Like, the music is so good in this movie. I really appreciate the music because it really adds that suspense.
It's iconic.
It's so
iconic. I definitely have to say the music is crazy.
And I'm pretty sure, like, I have this thing in the background going. It's supposed to be like the gold room, like kind of aesthetic right behind you. I will say that music that was played in those scenes with the gold room, with the event happening or whatever.
The 1920s.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure that is the exact song that I hear in those like liminal space videos. You know, I'm in liminal spaces, dream.
Is it the
dream
same
spaces.
song that's played at the end of the movie too when it's zooming into the portrait? Yeah, I think you're right. I've seen that.
I'm pretty sure I've heard those in those like back rooms, all of those kind of stuff. I'm obsessed with that stuff because it feels like that's how I feel like my dreams are. I would love to put
you in one and see like maybe we can film it for content.
Dude, I go there every night with my dreams. What are you talking about? So
to go back to the movie, to the real conversation here, because I mean this evidence is undeniable. He also happens to be playing when he's wearing the sweatshirt. Is when he's in the launch pad carpet, and then when he stands up, he got the Apollo 11 on his shirt, so it's like it's launching.
What? That makes sense, and I'm not gonna fight you on that one, but I think it's a stretch with the room key.
Okay, well here, how about this? This is also the same sweatshirt that Danny's wearing when he comes down the stairs crying. Or I don't know if he's crying, but Shelley Duvall's character, Wendy, realizes that he's scratched up a bit.
Yeah.
Where is he scratched up?
His neck.
His neck. Because Stanley Kubrick has to keep quiet about filming the moon landing. So that's why he's all bruised on the neck specifically.
Okay. No. How about no?
The scene where Jack is asking Wendy, "Don't you know what a commitment means?" is actually Kubrick showing how he's kept his silence, recreating a conversation with his own wife.
Oh, Dick, what are you talking about? Have you ever had a single moment's thought about my responsibilities? Have you ever thought for a single solitary moment about my responsibilities to my employers?
And his employers here is the American government.
Why would they go through all of that fake it?
Because we were in a Cold War against Russia. So it was a race to the moon. They were trying to get to the moon. We were trying to get to the moon.
What is this Despicable Me? Like, I don't get it.
It was to prevent nuclear warfare, Geraldine. Please. Stanley Kubrick is our hero. But yeah, there's a bunch of theories like this out there. Some people think that Wendy was actually the one going crazy throughout the whole movie. And there's missing furniture in some scenes. And if you watch the movie that way, apparently it kind of makes sense with the way like Jack Nicholson, reacts, and she's actually the one hallucinating. Some people have a theory that this is a commentary on the Holocaust. Some people have a theory that this movie is actually about like sexual abuse towards children. So there's a lot of theories out there. My favorite one is the moon theory. It's just fun. I like little theories like that.
I mean, there are definitely a lot of things happening in this movie, so I don't think that there's necessarily a wrong interpretation, but I'm more of a surface level kind of person. I like to think about movies sometimes, but I don't feel like this movie is, I don't know. I just didn't feel like this movie was meant to make you think too hard.
That's what people, like, I think this is, if not the most, one of the most, like, dissected movies to find out that kind of thing, because everybody comments on how Stanley Kubrick did everything so intentional. And that's the next part I want to talk about is Kubrick's genius. Because a lot of people call him, like, one of the greatest filmmakers that has ever lived, right? And one of the reasons behind that is because he was very, just meticulous about everything.
Okay.
Like, he would shoot things over and over and over to make sure he got the shot right. And a lot of the things that are in this movie that we know about The Shining are actually original to this film, and they weren't in the novel at all.
I don't like that then. Why would you do that? That's one thing that I hate about book to movie adaptations. That is, as somebody who does like to read sometimes, it depends on the book and if I'm actually like invested in it or whatever. I have not read a single Stanley. You said Stanley, but I was thinking Stephen King.
I do it all the time. Yeah. Stanley King,
Stephen Kubrick. I've not read a single Stephen King novel, but now I feel like going back and reading that would piss me off. It would piss me off because, I mean, I will say...
You don't like it when, like, film and books vary from each other.
I will, because, like, if you have a vision in your head when you're reading the book, you would hope that it would go right on the TV.
That is not the case with
pretty
this.
easily. But I know that not everything
Well, here's the thing, Geraldine. If that was the case, we wouldn't have the Grady twins. Because they're not in the book.
They were barely in it, so why? Why does it matter?
Hello, Danny. Come and play with us.
We wouldn't have the bleeding elevator.
The bleeding elevator is dope.
We wouldn't have the all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Because that's not in the book.
That's interesting.
We wouldn't have Here's Johnny.
Here's Johnny.
That's also original to the
I
movie.
never understood why he said that, though.
Because his name is John? No, his name is Jack, which is
his name
short
is
for
Jack.
John.
What? No.
Yeah, it is.
Jack is not short for John.
It is?
No, it's not. John is already
Jack
short.
can be short for Jonathan.
Yeah. Short for Jonathan.
I have never in my life heard that.
It's one of those weird things, like where Dick is short for William.
Well, yeah, and Billy is short for William. Yeah.
Well, Bill as William makes some sense because the ILL, right? Richard, Dick.
Well,
that doesn't make a lot of sense, but that is one. But I mean, for Jonathan to be Jack, I would just assume it's John.
You can do John or Jack. Or they even cover it with Wendy and her name being Winifred. Is she a Wendy? Is she a Freddie? No, I'm a Wendy. You know, you can have several different ones out of it.
I don't like that, and you're stressing me out with that. I don't like the names being too different. I will say, though, it is really funny that Jack Nicholson played Jack Torrance and Danny Lloyd played Danny Torrance. But Shelley Duvall played Wendy Torrance. So she had a very different
her own
name.
thing going on.
Yeah.
The axe is also original to this film. There's no axe in the book. There's actually a roque mallet is what he uses in the book. Well, the thing you play cricket with.
Yeah, I feel like this is more logical because that makes more sense as to how the door would be busted open like that. Because a mallet, I mean, what?
Yeah, it doesn't bust. There's no bathroom scene in the book. Also, Tony, the kid doing the whole finger thing.
Red rum.
That is iconic.
Red rum. Red rum. Red rum. Red rum.
How do you feel about Red Rum?
Love it. It's iconic.
There's a song out right now by 21 Savage called Red Rum.
He stays in the horror community.
I know, right? Isn't that cool?
What's funny is, like, my dad grew up, like, saying this to me all the time, and I never understood it until I saw it, and then I was like, oh, that makes sense.
Can you give me a Red Rum real quick?
Red Rum.
Oh, wow.
Danny isn't here, Mrs. Torrance.
That's pretty good. I like it. You did a good job. Like I said, Kubrick is known to be very meticulous, shooting several shots. Like, he wants his vision in his head on the thing.
I get that.
And he is going to make everybody suffer for it. Apparently, he's not
like that, though.
Nice to work with. Like, he is very hard to work with. The scene where you saw Jack coming up with a baseball bat against Shelley was shot 127 times.
Absolutely fucking not.
You've had your whole fucking life to think things over. What good's a few minutes more gonna do you now?
Love his performance. What's a good few minutes more gonna do you now? Great performance, but
fantastic performance.
But Shelley Duvall, Wendy, like, had to do that 127 times. She could not stay hydrated on set because she had to be crying for 127 takes for that. That she was getting dehydrated and would have to just chug water just to keep filming.
Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Awful. There's no reason to put people through that.
Yeah. Another example is Jack Nicholson hates cheese sandwiches. That is all he was allowed to eat on set. Cheese sandwiches.
Why?
To make him miserable. To give a better performance.
That is ridiculous. That's abuse.
Oh my God, that is so terrible.
It is terrible.
They're like, oh, you hate this? Guess what, buddy? That's the only thing you're eating breakfast,
I'd be
lunch,
like,
and dinner.
I'd make my assistants like low key bring me like McDonald's or some shit. Like, go get me some McDonald's. And I just describe it down in the trailer and be like, oh yeah, I'm so miserable because of my cheese sandwich.
You
and
see?
Just lie to everybody.
The scene between the actor that plays Halloran, Scatman Carruthers, and Danny was shot 140 times. Just them talking to each other while they're eating ice cream. And that really was hard for Scatman Carruthers. He had a really difficult time. I think he broke down during the filming of this movie because of how he actually even cried on set on the movie he did after this, because it was a movie he did with Clint Eastwood. And I don't know if you know, Clint Eastwood is a one-take guy. So
he's great. Yeah,
he does,
Clint Eastwood's a legend.
He shoots it one time and that's it. And so when Skyman Carruthers was on set and they did a scene and they said, okay, that's it, on to the next one, he broke down crying, supposedly.
That's sad. Like, you're traumatizing people for no fucking reason.
He definitely traumatized people. That's definitely part of it. And some people defended, saying that, like, oh, well, he did it for the art.
Who cares? Who cares? It's not that serious.
No, it's too much abuse.
That's too much. I would never put people, like, you're gonna, like, make everyone suffer because you have a vision. Who cares? Nothing has to be perfect.
And this was on film, right?
Yeah,
so he wasted so much. How many hours of film do you think he wasted?
Well, let's put it this way. We've covered a few films now on the podcast. We talked about Saw being shot in 12 to 18 days or something. Mm-hmm. Sometimes movies on the long end will be shot for 2 months, 3 months. 4 months is a really long shoot.
I think 6 months is the longest that I've ever heard a movie being
This movie, just the shooting part of it, took over a year.
Jesus Christ. No.
Over a year?
Over a year working on one movie.
They went through torture.
Just filming. This is not editing, nothing. Editing, and when you have that much time of footage, editing also took a very long time.
Because that was back then when they had to actually
Yeah.
They were snipping it.
Oh, God. Yeah.
No. And it took so long that the next movie that Shelley Duvall went on to film released the same year as this one.
That's sad. That is so sad. And that poor woman, she suffered so much in this movie. She really did.
We'll definitely be covering that later here in a bit. I want to cover a little bit about the differences between Stanley Kubrick and Stephen King. We're talking a lot about Stanley Kubrick, but this season is about Stephen King.
Yeah.
He himself has been a long critic of Kubrick's interpretation of his book, and here he is consistently voicing his opinion over the years since the film's release.
What about Jack Nicholson in The Shining? Were you pleased with that?
I thought he did a wonderful job.
Yeah.
The Shining. Enjoyed it very much.
How did you feel about the movie itself?
Well, I feel both ways. I got to see it 4 times because of commitments one place and another. And there are an awful lot of things about that movie that I think are flawless and beautiful and just marvelous. And then there are other times when I feel as though I'd given Stanley Kubrick a live grenade and he heroically threw his body on it.
Did you like Kubrick's film of The Shining?
No. Cold. I'm not a cold guy. I mean, I think one of the things that people relate to in my books is there's a warmth, there's a reaching out and saying to the reader, I want you to be a part of this. And with Kubrick's The Shining, I felt that it was very cold. Shelley Duvall as Wendy is really one of the most misogynistic characters ever put on film. She's basically just there to scream and be stupid. And that's not the woman that I wrote about.
Did you talk to Kubrick about it?
I met him on the set. I was over in England, just out on that one meeting that I thought that he was a very compulsive, almost like anal man. I have a real problem with The Shining, and Stanley Kubrick knew that I had a problem with The Shining. In the novel, The Shining, Jack Torrance is a difficult character, but he's fundamentally a sympathetic character. And I always visualized him as a piece of metal that's bent first one way and the other by these malignant spirits who basically want his son because his son is a psychically powerful person. So I saw these all as warm characters that were being threatened by forces from without, from ghosts, from real supernatural creatures. And the film is extremely cold. Stanley Kubrick saw The Haunting as coming from Jack Torrance, from the Jack Nicholson character, whereas I always saw it from outside. So we had a fundamental difference of opinion about it. I always thought that the real difference between my take on it and Stanley Kubrick's take on it was this. In my novel, the hotel burns. In Kubrick's movie, the hotel freezes. It's a difference between warmth and cold. But the images are striking. There's no doubt about it. I mean, Jack Nicholson's face in the doorway, his bearded, crazy, grinning face. He says, "Here's Johnny," which was his ad lib, and it became part of the movie. So the images are striking, but to me that's surface, it's not substance. So I used to describe The Shining, the film, as something like a beautiful car that had no engine in it.
A beautiful car with no engine.
He has a way with words. Like, that is like such a backhanded compliment.
Yeah.
But it's like, I get it. He was the artist of the book, The Baby.
Yeah, can I be honest?
Yeah.
I've never heard Stephen King talk. Obviously, I respect the man. He's like the
legend,
horror man. Like, you go to our local bookstore, the horror section is literally 95% Stephen King, and he's still pumping out novels.
He made a name for himself, and he does that. He pumps them out.
He pumps them out. He just sold me on reading The Shining. Like, genuinely. Just hearing him talk about it and how they're different, and what's, like, his is warm and inviting, and the movie is cold. I'm like, fuck it. Now I got another author to start reading.
Stephen King put in a screenplay for the movie, and Stanley Kubrick just threw it in the trash.
That's ridiculous.
I don't think he even read it.
But I think also as the author, they should be there making some of those calls to help create their vision, because that was ultimately their vision.
They did not get along creatively. Stanley Kubrick really took... the way this movie came to be is that Stanley Kubrick wanted to make a horror film, but he didn't just want to make any horror film. He wanted to do something that's never been done before. That's just his nature. And so he read a bunch of horror novels. And there's this, myth that his secretary would just hear like bangs on the wall next to his office after he would start reading a book, think it's garbage, throw it against the wall. Next book, throw it against the wall. And it wasn't until he landed on The Shining that she didn't hear another book fly against the wall. So the story caught his attention, but he's always said that Stephen King puts everything on the page as like not as a compliment, saying that there are good parts in here that I'll extract and make it into, the film that he ended up making.
I just don't agree with that. Yes, you're entitled to that as the director, as the visual creator, but I still think that, there is a respect that needs to be given to the authors when you create something that is based on their book.
I agree.
I don't know. I like this movie as like separately as well. Again, I really try to detach Kubrick from it. I think people regard him as so genius, and I kind of think like, this might sound bitchy of me to say, so forgive me. But
it's just your opinion.
I think that there's a lot of things that they did in this movie that we could do now just as easily. So it's like, they're not that much of a genius, bro. For you to like... Because, honestly, there was that scene in Evil Dead Rise with the elevator. Reminded me so much of The Shining. And I'm sure that was a visual that was definitely influenced by that movie that they created in Evil Dead Rise. We can do it now just as easily. Like, that doesn't mean that you're a fucking genius. I'm sorry. And I might get, like, shunned for that. And I don't care. Because Stanley Kubrick is a fucking asshole, and I hate him, so...
Well, I gotta say, Geraldine, like, I personally don't revere this movie very much. This is the first time I watched it, and it's very ambiguous. Like I said before, it's very vague. I really didn't know what I was watching. I was prepared to watch the scariest movie of all time, quote unquote, because I hear that all the time. And so I was really nervous to watch this, and to find out that he doesn't even hold the axe until the last 30 minutes of the film. And I understand it's supposed to be a psychological thriller. And I think this is another instance similar to when I watched the Raiders of the Lost Ark's Indiana Jones film, where it was a little slow for me. And I think big part of that reason is because this movie, The Shining, you just mentioned Evil Dead Rise and how it was inspired from probably The Shining, inspired so many other scenes. And I've seen so much of the iconography referenced in other media that me watching it in 2024, I'm completely watching it in a different perspective, where it's a little harder for me to appreciate all the things that were probably done for the first time, that was hadn't been done before, and that went on to inspire so many other things. So I did watch it with an open mind, but ultimately my experience is that the film is a little slow. But I think my opinion is very similar to Stephen King's, where striking imagery, like
very striking, and even the carpet, like the set design, beautiful.
Yeah,
the music really encompasses everything, but I think the music really is a carrier of the film in itself.
I love the music
because the music really drives it. Like, you are on the edge of your seat because of the music setting the tone for what you're supposed to be feeling.
And the performances are great. Nicholson and Wendy Duvall, they both gave phenomenal performances.
That was funny. Did you do that on purpose, or was that actually? That was really funny.
That was Shelley Duvall.
It just rolled out of your rolled off your tongue. I thought you did it on purpose for a second there, because sometimes you do that.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I agree with you, but also, like he said, there's a difference between like the warmth and the cold. Like literally, this movie is cold. Like,
it's very cold. It's very soulless to me.
Patrick really walked in at the end of it when I was watching it, and he was like, "So can you explain it?" So I explained it to him, and he was like, "Okay." And then at the end, I remembered, we see this big picture of Jack Nicholson included, and I was like, I forget, like, what the fuck is he like? That doesn't the math ain't mathin'.
See, this is what I'm saying. This is
so
why
we had to do
people
research. So I'm like, if I have to do that at the end of your movie, I feel like you didn't do a good job for keeping the audience engaged.
That's why people call him a genius, because people take him. He's so sophisticated. Look at all the stuff he's questioning you, and all these things that are in the movie. I'm going to do a really short rant about this, because I feel like in the past 2 years, or past maybe even more 5 years, movies have become very ambiguous. And I think this is a huge departure from how films were in the 90s and the 2000s, where movies were like super tropey. And like, if a girl likes a boy, they beat you over the head with a bat about it, to where like, it's very predictable. And now I feel like we've really moved away from that. And I think it's really interesting that we're getting different kinds of movies, and they're a little more artsier. And I enjoy that aspect of it. But what it's led me to feel is like, when I watch a movie, I don't get the character's intentions, the motivations, the significance behind certain scenes. Like, I loved Barbie, and I hate how it got snubbed, right?
Yeah.
But even that movie, as big of a film it was, a blockbuster, there's some scenes in it where like, I feel like I didn't quite get, or I had to like think about it a little more. Same thing with Oppenheimer, even when I watched that film and it was like, the movie is very ambiguous. And I think a lot of Christopher Nolan's films are like that. And it leaves me leaving the theater without like a certain emotion. I like films that I can leave and be like, I'm sad or I'm happy. Yeah. And I understand. But this movie, same thing. I watched the ending of it. There's several interpretations on why he's in the portrait. But I was like, I immediately looked over at Bailey after I watched the movie, and I was like, did you get that?
Yeah.
Because none of us did.
We've had a really deep discussion about this recently, ever since the Barbenheimer thing happened, and it's just iconic. We notice it now. Obviously, we've seen The Shining now, and we can see that this is indicative of film over time, just in general. But I feel like sometimes you'll get these directors who want to make an art piece so badly they lose the human being in it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's just like, and I can respect the art piece for being a piece of art, but the whole point of being art is to connect to the human being.
Yes. You lose that connection.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like this movie in particular, The Shining, was so dead set on being Stanley Kubrick's art piece of showing exactly what he wanted to show, that it just rips the human people out of it.
I agree.
I had no connection to any character at any point. Like, no enthusiasm, no character, nothing.
I completely agree, and that's, I mean, and again, beautiful, striking imagery. I will agree with Stephen King there. And like he said, the words that like literally rolled off his tongue, cold and the warmth. The movie did feel really cool. Like, I literally had no connection to the characters. Like, I agree. If I don't care what's going on, or I don't like understand what's going on, or like, I'm not going to care what happens. And I want to feel connected. I want to like lose myself into your movie.
That scene where like it's zooming into that portrait, I can tell this is supposed to be a mind-blowing scene. Yeah, but I don't get it. What's so mind-blowing? The math thing.
This is 1921. What year are we in now?
Yeah.
Like,
so here's a little bit about this conversation about how King and Kubrick differently wrote the book and filmed the movie. King wrote a book that was about haunted people as much as it was about a haunted hotel, while Kubrick made a movie about a deranged lunatic running amok with ghosts. King regards Jack as one of his most self-referential characters, saying he wrote the book when he was struggling with alcoholism himself. He views Jack as a troubled but good man trying to do the right thing.
I didn't get that at all. See, but it's in the book, and I'm sure if we read the book, completely different story here.
It is a completely different story. Kubrick, on the other hand, has this direct quote saying that Jack comes to the hotel psychologically prepared to do its murderous bidding. He doesn't have very much farther to go for his anger and frustration to become completely uncontrollable. He is married to a woman for he has only contempt. He hates his son. In the hotel, at the mercy of its powerful evil, he is quickly ready to fulfill his dark role.
I'm not going to hurt you. You didn't let me finish my sentence. I said, I'm not gonna hurt you. I'm just gonna bash your brains in. I'm gonna bash them right the fuck in.
His acting is so stellar, though. Like, I can't even, like, it's so good. But that's the thing, though, is like, when I was watching this, I made a note and I was like, there is zero chemistry between any of these goddamn characters.
Mm-hmm.
None of them have chemistry. Like even Shelley Duvall and Jack Nicholson, there is no warmth. There is no like love. Like you can't even feel that. So like it feels like Kubrick literally was like, yeah, you're gonna go fucking nuts and you want to kill your whole family anyway.
Yeah.
So now this is just gonna give you a reason to do it.
Exactly.
And I'm like, no, that I didn't get that at all. So it's just
Yeah,
kind
it
of
felt
disappointing.
very. What did Stephen King say in that video? It was him saying that she feels very misogynistic.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was just kind of the vibe going into it. And I didn't really piece that together when we were watching the movie. I was just like, oh, it's a movie of the times, whatever.
Yeah, I see.
But hearing that particular quote from Kubrick saying like, oh, well, Jack already wanted to kill her, so now he has a reason to. I'm just like, so then what's the point of the movie?
King, like he says, he calls in the book, Jack Torrance is a loving father. And he's having some struggles, of course, but he's ultimately, like he says in interviews, a sympathetic man, meaning that you empathize with him. And the hotel takes advantage of him. The book is actually a lot more supernatural than the movie. Some argue that there's not even any actual ghosts in the movie, and that it's all hallucinations that are coming from Jack
I will
himself.
say that is something that, like, visually Kubrick does well, because you're watching this and you're like, what's real and what's not. So you do struggle with that line, and you're like, this is a haunted hotel, but you don't exactly know what's going on. Like, who's actually a ghost here? Who's actually real? Or like, is Jack the one experiencing this, or is Wendy experiencing? Because you do kind of feel that, because like when she's trying to find Danny, and later in the film, she sees the creepy like Winnie the Pooh like ghost thing, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, in the book, it's a lot more definitive. It is. The hotel is definitely haunted, and they're basically trying to use Jack Torrance to do its bidding, to make itself more powerful. In the book, there's no hedge maze. Instead, it has like bushes that are in the shape of animals, and they come to life and they move around.
Oh, I don't like that. Don't like that. But I do like I like the maze, because it is like really particularly visually stunning, especially when they do that shot of the zoom out of them walking in the maze. Like, I'm sure it was, I don't know if that was a super complicated thing to shoot or anything, or maybe they like green screened it somehow. It was cool. It was a really cool shot. And I like the idea of like puzzles, because this movie itself is a puzzle. You're like, what is real? What is not? Who's experiencing this? Who is actually going crazy? Is this all happening? Like, is none of this actually happening? Am I the one going crazy?
Right.
Like, you kind of do reflect inward. And if that was like the genius in the film, well done. But I just, who cares? I'm sorry.
In King's book, the Overlook makes a good man a monster, finds his weaknesses, and uses them to transform him.
Okay.
Meanwhile, in Kubrick's interpretation, he's already well on his way to become a monster when he arrives. It's not a stretch to think that Jack would ultimately come to a similar conclusion already. And like you said, the hotel just gave him a reason, or just pushed it to coming up quicker. Because I think Stanley was mostly, when he read the book, he was just interested in showing Jack being crazy, while what King wanted to do is like show more of a descent into this madness. Yeah, Danny.
It was really funny, because we were watching that scene when he's running through the maze, and it like I have captions on when I watch things, because I feel like I miss out on important dialogue. What's really funny is at this point you can't understand a word the man is saying, and he's saying, "Help me, Wendy, Danny,
come boy,
come back," or anything. And he's like, ah! And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
That is
That's
not what he's saying.
Who probably had to do that 250
times.
Yeah.
Probably.
Well, only having cheese sandwiches in his tummy.
He was probably so miserable. He's like, get me the hell out of here.
Yeah. Usually there's a lot of behind the scenes footage, and he does get amped up. I mean, at this point of filming, Jack Nicholson was regarded as one of the best actors around to have in one of your movies.
Oh, yeah. It was so influential that Christian Slater, he's also a well-known actor, really good actor. A lot of people dislike his taste or his style, because they think that he tried to model himself after Jack Nicholson a lot of the time. But that's how influential Jack Nicholson is. He does a really good job with the roles that he's given, no matter what genre. Rom-coms, like literally like he was in Batman as the Joker.
I think that they watched this movie surely to cast him as a Joker. I mean,
oh, probably. He just does great. He does a really good job. Like, The man is a genius, for
Dedicated,
sure.
yeah. Another person I could see be in this role, though, is Jim Carrey. Could you imagine Jim Carrey as Jack Torrance?
Oh, 1000%. But it's so hard to separate the man from comedy. Even though I've seen him in non-comedy films and he does a fantastic job in serious roles, it's just really difficult for me to just see him as anything other than like, you know, Ace Ventura or anything like that.
Funny. Well, some people who were considered, because I think Jim Carrey was probably like 15 when this movie was filmed.
That's weird.
Yeah, some other people who were considered for the role of Jack Torrance is Harrison Ford. Was originally considered to play Jack Torrance.
That would have been weird, I think. But he's a really good actor as well. But I couldn't see him as that ever.
It was also another person who was up for the role too was Robin Williams.
Oh, Robin Williams, I bet, would have done a very, very good job, actually.
It was apparently decided that he would be too psychotic for the role.
Yeah, after they made him eat only cheese sandwiches. Jesus
I don't even know if Robin Williams could stay on.
I don't think I'm glad he didn't have to suffer through that.
He probably would have
suffered enough.
Yeah, he really did.
Yeah.
So I was going to say he probably would have had like more mental health challenges than he already did have had he been in that movie. Lord knows.
Here's a quote from the 2013 Salon article. In King's novel, the Overlook Hotel's seduction of Jack Torrance is rooted in the nebbishly failed writer's frustrated desire to be extraordinary, larger than life. In Kubrick's film, Jack's madness becomes that of an imperious auteur, convinced of his own impotence, running amok, and seeking to wipe out the mere human beings whose inconvenient presence muddles his vision.
Doesn't that make sense? Like that, like, you know, Stanley Kubrick, I feel like they both make Jack kind of like themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, and seeing that, like Jack, he gets mad at everybody. He just wants to write his novel, and he like yells at everybody and pushes them away.
Like in the book, Stephen King made himself out to be a loving father taken over by being possessed. Yeah. And in the movie, Stanley Kubrick is just an asshole, so he just made the character an asshole.
Yeah. What's funny is I noticed this, you know, a lot of it's hard for people to not see a reflection of themselves in certain characters, you know? Like, you know, you said, like, if you made movies or whatever, like, a lot of the time people, like, write characters similarly to themselves or based on themselves. To bring up another problematic director that I used to admire, because I like his style of film and writing, because it just feels, like, so big. Mm-hmm. But Woody Allen does that a lot. He writes the main character as a reflection of himself. Mm-hmm. He's, like, neurotic and everything, and always has these like problems and stuff, and is super flawed, dating young girls, which is ironic because he was doing that IRL. But yeah, it's just really interesting how you always put yourself into that.
I think you have to do it to at least a certain extent. Yeah, like put some of your heart into everything that you do.
I don't think it necessarily has to be like a direct reflection of you as a person, but I do think like there's always a characteristic. Like it's almost like you're cutting a sliver of you out and putting it in. Like, here you go.
I agree.
Here's a little bit of me.
Yeah, it's the human element.
Mm-hmm. Except for there was not any real human element in this movie.
I agree. In the novel, Wendy is not only capable of taking care of herself and her family, but also of standing up to Jack.
What the fuck?
While in the movie, she appears to be so delicate that a loud noise could shatter her into a million pieces. King has concluded that Kubrick's version of Wendy is incredibly misogynistic.
That's really disappointing because I would. Okay, so we were before the podcast. You and I were talking about remakes and how I was kind of frustrated by some of them because it feels like there's not a lot of original ideas. Yeah. But I do like watching movies in general. So either way, I would watch the movie. I would be interested in seeing this one remade, if I'm being honest.
Well, good news for you. Okay. He hated this movie so much. Okay. That in the 90s, King bought the rights back from Kubrick. Mm-hmm. They had to do a whole contract, and like I said, Stephen King has been very vocal about voicing his dislike of the film. Mm-hmm. In the contract, Stanley gave King the rights to his book back, but the agreement was that he would no longer be able to talk crap about the movie or Stanley Kubrick. He could still talk as much crap as he wanted about Jack Nicholson or anybody else, but in the contract, he was not allowed to make any more comments about Stanley Kubrick.
Sounds like someone has some feelings on his sleeve.
And so Stephen King went on to produce a 3-episode miniseries that is a lot more. It's similar to the book. I mean,
like a blockbuster Hollywood film. I want to see a big one on the screen that does justice to it with really good actors. You know who would be great? You know, I like him a lot. They use him a lot for horror films in general. Bill Skarsgård. He would do fantastic as Jack Torrance, personally.
I feel like they'd get Anya Taylor-Joy to be Wendy.
Yeah,
that would be great. Yeah. Or even, I know people have even said that Mia Goth kind of favors Shelley Duvall a little bit.
Honestly, I would. Winona Ryder?
Ooh, I would like that too. Yeah. That would be great. It'd be so nice to see like a modern face as a strong female lead for this, because you get tired of it. And again, Shelley Duvall's like treatment in the film that we're about to talk about was just horrible. Yeah. And to see that this character who was strong that we don't even get to see. I can only imagine true Stephen King fans who watch this film probably fucking hate it.
Being upset.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think more people are familiar with the film than they are in the book.
That's true. I agree.
As far as Shelley Duvall is concerned, like she didn't go to acting school. She wasn't classically trained. She was actually found by a producer at a mall, and she was like a makeup demonstrator. Wow. And they were just so captivated by like her look and just like how intriguing she was as a person that they brought her to Hollywood, and that's how her career ended up going.
She's very unique looking, and not in like a bad way at all. I think some of the not typical, like unconventional attractiveness makes her so attractive at the same time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, she looks unique, and also like when you're not taught how to do something, like all that unique stuff to you isn't beat out of you.
But it also like went on to give her a pretty good career. I mean, she's been in several really, really good films, especially like one of my more notable performances of hers is with Robin Williams in the Popeye film.
Popeye, yeah. That came out the same year this did.
That is insane, because that movie is also like a big production. It feels like it feels like a humongous production compared to this.
Isn't it funny too that like Robin Williams was considered
that
to
is
play
really
Jack
funny.
Torrance?
The Circle of Life.
Yeah. I would like to get into the abuse of Shelley Duvall. It is said that to pull the performances that Kubrick wanted out of the actors, that he pushed them like past their boundaries, some more than others. Duvall's being like one of the most notable in The Shining. He isolated her. Like he made sure that she didn't stay in the same hotel that everybody else did. He would encourage crew and staff to don't try to comfort her. This is also on footage. Like there was a behind the scenes filming being done while the movie was shooting.
Wow.
And you see him like, being this way towards her. She went through a lot. He would scold her. He would berate her, and her mental health did suffer from it. On set, she was losing hair. Like just clumps of hair would come out. I think a doctor had to be called out just to check in on her. She would get dehydrated. From her first day on set, Kubrick took every opportunity to punish Shelley for unidentifiable misdemeanors and forbade the other cast and crew from offering her any comfort, telling them to ignore her whenever possible.
That's ridiculous.
He told them not to sympathize with Shelley and bluntly instructed them. And it just made her feel really alone, of course. And that's what he wanted her to feel like, because he wanted all that to, bring that performance out of her.
I am so against that kind of instruction, or people who do that kind of method acting situation where they force people, like you abuse people to bring out the best quality of like to whatever like would benefit the character acting. I think that people are very deeply flawed in general, and we all have our own stories, our own backgrounds. You don't ever know what anyone's going through with themselves, and I think that like people can pull great depths out of themselves that you have no idea about, and for you to just put them through that abuse is absolutely for nothing.
Yeah,
and
I agree. It's
awful.
Completely unnecessary. It's just so you can have that number, and people unfortunately do react like that. They're like I said, like they regard him as a genius, and like, oh my gosh, like he made them do this to get this performance out of them. But I agree with you. I don't think that was necessary to get a good performance out of them.
No. Like if I were ever to be a director and someone's like, oh yeah, I'm going to put myself through this extreme thing, because I know it's really controversial that, like, Christian Bale does like this extensive, like losing weight, gaining weight, gaining weight for roles and stuff like that. I think it's not necessary to do that at all, because I think that you're going to put yourself through so much more harm.
He knows that.
And he does. But I mean, he's a great actor, and I respect his craft. I do. But at the same time, it's going to have detrimental effects.
For sure. I just think if you want to do it, go for it. But Stanley Kubrick was enforcing this on her.
No, I would be like, I don't support what you're doing. do what you need to do, but I'm not going to have any part in pushing that out of you because I think that you are talented without it.
In the bathroom scene where Jack comes through the door with the axe, Jack Nicholson is actually a firefighter before he was an actor.
That's actually really
they built a bunch of fake doors for him to bust through the axe. But he was so good at busting through the door since he, was a firefighter that they had to get real doors. Because he was just going through, he would just swing the axe through the freaking door.
That's funny.
But because of that, they ended up going through almost 60 doors.
Jeez.
Yeah, I know. And Shelley Duvall had to act through it and every take. And then, and I'm not saying this is Jack Nicholson's fault. This is, Stanley Kubrick wanting so many takes of this. But you see her in the bathroom and how hysterical and just to me, it looks like she's scared for her life.
I mean,
genuine fear
that's
is
what
across
I
her
get
face.
from it. She does great.
So I think she did a great performance, but she had to do that for 3 days. It took to film that one scene. She had to scream like that for 3 whole days.
Can you imagine the damage? The physical damage is not only the mental, but the physical damage to your vocal cords for doing that. The dehydration that she was experiencing based on the crying and the screaming and everything. That poor woman, I swear. I just want to give her a hug.
Yeah. Nicholson said that Shelley's performance was the hardest job he's ever seen anybody do, the most demanding role he's ever seen. So I think he does sympathize with Shelley Duvall.
She could have sued, and I'm sure she was probably scared because
I'm sure that's a part of it. She's gone on record since, saying that it was the hardest thing she's ever had to do, but that she I forget what the quote is exactly, but she makes it known that that Stanley Kubrick treated her warmly and friendly. That's what she said. Now that doesn't sound like the truth to me. I don't know if she's covering up for something, or if she was worried that she wouldn't get any more work, or if she just genuinely feels that way.
Well, I mean, nowadays if you badmouth your director, you could get blacklisted in Hollywood because Megan Fox critiqued Michael Bay, was taken out of those movies. Yeah. Katherine Heigl said nasty things about Judd Apatow.
And this is 1980.
Yeah.
So it's even worse.
It's even worse then than it was now. And I think now we regard those actors who have spoken out as oh, okay, it's fine, whatever.
Let's hold people up to
you're allowed to voice your opinions. You don't have to just go along with what everyone's saying. So I think that's a thing that maybe they just didn't know, especially women back in this day.
I agree.
So
Duvall has rarely been seen publicly in the last 20 years. Her last big public appearance was on Dr. Phil in 2016 for a sporadic interview where she was seen in clear need of help, speaking erratically with her mental health obviously in disarray.
Are you in good health as far as your heart and your lungs and everything? Are you fit?
Damned if I do, damned if I don't. I mean, if I say I'm healthy, first thing they'll do is hurt me tonight.
Who will hurt you?
Whoever is in security or at the bank doing night work.
Back in the 1980s, Shelley Duvall was considered one of the best young actresses in Hollywood. Her role in The Shining was praised for its poignancy.
I'm gonna go now.
She followed up playing Olive Oyl opposite the late great Robin Williams as Popeye.
Oh, my hero.
I loved Robin.
I was sorry when he died.
I don't think he's dead.
Yeah, you don't think he's dead?
No.
Where do you think he is?
Shape-shifting.
Yeah.
He looks real good in some forms, in other forms he doesn't.
Do you see him?
Have, yes.
That's really sad.
Yeah. So
it's tough to see, honestly.
It is hard to watch. Like I said, that was from 2016. Supposedly she's doing better now, but some people speculate that the filming of The Shining, just completely traumatized her, and she hasn't been the same since. Others go out to say that she just has had mental health problems for a long time now, and
I'm sure that didn't fucking help.
Yeah, I'm sure it didn't help. But yeah, that was from an interview in 2016, and that's just a clip from it. Throughout the rest of the interview, she is saying odd things about the Bermuda Triangle and how's inside her, or just similar things that obviously you can tell that she needs help of some sort.
It's just so sad, and that makes really I would love to speak to her, but I wouldn't even want to bring up this film because I'd be so scared that it would, trigger something that would make her upset. If I could get to speak to her, I mean, gosh, she is so talented. I think that it would be really, really cool, but at the same time, That might be one that I would just keep on a list somewhere. Maybe one day, but probably not anytime soon.
Yeah.
Just because of I don't know. That's just really sad, and that really just hurts me a little bit.
It does. I mean, especially for seeing her performance in that film, and just like I said, she's rarely been seen the last 20 years. A couple people have found her in her car. Some people have been concerned because she drives like a van, and
I think she has a granddaughter who is famous on TikTok who posts videos with her. So I think she's doing okay and has her granddaughter to look after her. Her granddaughter looks like a striking.
Oh really?
Literally copy paste. Looks a lot like her.
I'll have to check it out. But yeah, supposedly she's doing a lot better since the filming of that interview, and she's actually set to make her comeback in the film industry soon, as she has been cast in the upcoming film entitled The Forest Hills, which is an indie horror film.
I will be watching it then, because maybe that will be when we could talk to her in the future. Yeah. That's what I'm gonna manifest for us.
Me too, yeah.
Hopefully we have. Maybe it's not this year. Maybe it'll be next year when it comes out. I have no idea. Do you know? Do you have any idea of
I think it's either this year or next year. It's soon.
Well, we'll keep an eye out. It'll be a close eye, and I will make a note to try to reach out to her people and be like, please, she's a queen, and we respect her and love her.
From videos I've seen of people approaching her recently that I've seen her, she is extraordinarily kind, and she appreciates it when people are kind to her. So I think one of the biggest things about me watching this movie is that I got to know who Shelley Duvall is now and see everything that she went through, and I have so much respect for her and her performance, and just nothing but love for Shelley Duvall.
Same. I have nothing but love for her, and again, if we ever got the chance to speak to her, I would probably shed some tears, but they would be like happy tears, but also some sad tears, just because she shouldn't have had to go through that, and especially alongside her, Jack Nicholson should have said something.
Yeah, definitely. I think everybody does what people do, and they just went along with how it was. Like I said, Kubrick is not a fun guy to work for on anybody's regard. I talked about how Jack Nicholson had to deal with it. I talked about how Scatman Carruthers had to deal with it and how he broke down on set.
I mean, imagine the treatment of the child, Danny Lloyd. Is there anything about him out there?
No, actually, I know that he didn't even know it was a horror movie. They led him to believe it was a drama, and it wasn't until he was 16 that he watched the movie and found out. He didn't know he was in a horror movie.
He did really good for a child actor.
I don't know how they explained the red rum.
How did he not know?
He didn't know how to read at the time, probably.
You're just like, you write these letters. Don't actually tell your parents how we're doing that. That's problematic, sir. What are you talking about? Yeah. He did really good though for a child actor.
I think all the performances did great, and we're gonna get to rating the film here in a second too. And while I dislike a lot of things about the movie, if I'm just being frank, and it's really hard for me to say that because we're doing a okay.
Because your name's Frankie.
Yeah, I got it. To be me.
To be frank.
Yeah. It's hard for me to come to a different community that I'm not a part of, the horror community, and say, hey, the movie you think is the best horror film of all time
sucks. No, I'm just kidding.
And that's not the attitude I want to give at all. Yeah. I think there's a lot of things about the film that I appreciate, including the visuals and especially the performances.
There's also a lot of things that it doesn't do well, and there's also a lot of things that I also don't like as well. So I think it was also a sign of the times, separately, additionally.
So let's go ahead and get into our rating.
Okay.
For me personally, Jalen, like I said, the movie didn't do it for me on a lot of levels. It was very ambiguous, very vague, confusing. I didn't know what's going on. Very cold, like Stephen King says so himself. But the performances do it so well that it bumps it out a little bit. So out of a 10, I give this movie a 7.
A 7, okay. For me, it does a lot of really cool things. I think I really like the soundtrack. The soundtrack, like I said, is a really driving force because on these parts that you don't know what's going on, especially not being involved in reading the book, so maybe you have no idea what is supposed to be happening. I don't know, quote unquote. I feel like the music being the biggest driving force is kind of a bad thing for the movie. That I'm like, oh, this is because of the music. I'm feeling suspense. because otherwise I wouldn't have felt it otherwise. I will say though, like the child and with the tricycle riding down that was suspenseful for me just in general, because like you don't know what could turn at any corner. Oh, something's gonna be there. Oh, something's gonna be there.
That was very unique for this film. This film was one of the first films using a Steadicam, and it's how they were able to get that shot. Cool.
That's very cool. I also liked a lot of the visual imagery. I love the carpets. The carpets are so iconic. I actually have wrapping paper that is of the carpet. I don't even want to use it because it's so pretty. I mean, there's a lot of things that are like that really stand out about it, except for one thing that I was like, whoa. And I think it was a sign of the times, but again, does not excuse anything.
The bathroom scene with Grady?
Yes.
Yeah.
They say the N-word. So like racial slurs, but like the full word, not like the one.
It said a few times too.
Yeah, not the one that Morgan Wallen said, like the hard R, guys. Like that, I was like, whoa, not once, not twice, but thrice, I will say. And I was like,
yeah, back to back to back.
Yeah, I was like, what are we watching?
Yeah. I also thought, the one warm character in this movie was, to me, Halloran.
Yes.
And something that was upsetting to me was just that, like, I got a warm sensation from him, and then they spent so long on him coming to the hotel. And he just gets axed as soon as he walks in.
Just to get axed.
Yeah.
That's it. I was like, okay, that's it. That's all we're doing there. Yeah. So another really cool thing that it does, though, is I really like the isolation. The isolation that you feel from the snow. It reminds me, one, of a video game that I played. It was called The Suicide of Rachel Foster. Really hard video game to play story-wise, because it was definitely like really triggering and hard to like play along with. The visuals were very creepy, but it was about isolation in a hotel, and it was so.
Have you played Until Dawn?
I have, and it reminded me of that too, a little bit too, like just being isolated. But it also reminds me of when I was younger. I don't know if you remember, there was like a really bad like year of snow. It wasn't like recently, but it was I want to say like at least maybe 10 years ago or something like that. Really bad year of snow. I actually came down to visit came up, because I always forget the direction in which we live. Came up to visit my aunt and uncle, stayed the night there just for a weekend. Go to like leave, snow. We were snowed in for like a week. Oh, wow. And I was like going crazy, because I was like, you don't go anywhere. You're eating the same thing basically back to back. Cabin fever. It's a real thing. But it also makes me also like really curious about Eli Roth's Cabin Fever series, because he has a series called Cabin Fever. Very curious about that series, because I haven't watched it myself, but I'm like, ooh, maybe that'll be kind of similar in that aspect, but also makes me think of Amityville Horror because of this movie. I'm not going to go too much into it about what it's about, because I do want us to cover that franchise at some point. But a lot of good things.
Yeah, maybe think of COVID.
Yeah,
because we're a little more used to isolation. Because
the isolation really like does something. I don't know. Maybe it's just because the snow imagery and the isolation that also adds to that coldness that you do feel, that physical coldness. I don't know. So to me, it does a lot of the things right, but hearing Stephen King's talk about it, like, it really like pulls me away a little bit more. So I'm a little bit more like retracted from it. I still think it does a lot of good things. So I'm going to rate it a little bit higher than what you did. I would say it's still probably an 8 in my book.
An 8. Okay. So that averages out to 7.5.
7.5.
7.5 for our first movie, The Shining. It's not. I thought this movie, just from other people saying and just from other people's praise about the film.
Yeah.
I thought it would be like a 10 out of 10, maybe a 9 out of 10. And this movie just wasn't for me. But I am very hopeful for the next movies that we're going to see this season. I hope I didn't scare everybody off from having a negative take on this movie. I tried to include as much positivity as I could. But we'll be covering Christine next week, which I'm really excited about.
I am also very excited about it, because who doesn't love a car that can do things? Yeah. It's crazy.
But thank you, everybody, for sticking around and listening, and we'll see you guys next time.
We will see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to Fright or Flight, a Live Oaks Village production. This episode was hosted by Geraldine Johnson and Saul Alberto Arizmendi Ochoa. Editing and music composition by Saul Alberto Arizmendi Ochoa.